of guys who are perceiving themselves as being just undateable. And they may or may not be undateable, but there are certainly some people out there who are willing to profit off their confusion and misery.
These are the incels we hear about in the media.
Yes. There are. Have you come across the black pillars?
No, but the term is familiar to me. I don't actually know what it's about. I know what the red pill is about, but the black pill, not quite.
So the red pill is from the Matrix. You got, so you take the red pill and show Keanu Reeves what reality is, and blue pill you don't. So there's the red pillars, and the red pillars have sort of got half of a story about evolution in there, and they've kind of misunderstood it, but they kind of got a bit of it. The black pillars, though, have decided to mix a sort of cod version of evolutionary theory with a sort of nihilism, and then go, right, well, since your genome is fixed at birth, there is literally nothing you can do, since women only select for genetic qualities, and genetic qualities are and genes are fixed, which they're completely wrong about, incidentally. I mean, your genome is fixed at birth, your genotype is fixed at birth, but your phenotype isn't. So, I mean, I wish people would read more than one chapter of a biology book. I really do. I just wouldn't just read one chapter that sort of satisfies whatever's on their mind at the moment, and then just kind of go, right, okay, I'm going to go. If they'd read the rest of the book, they might learn something useful. And one of the things they might learn is that, your genotype might be fixed at birth, but your phenotype certainly isn't. And if you worked on yourself a bit, had a wash, went to the gym, got a decent job, stopped spending your time on sites where people are egging you on to think that women are all, rapacious gold diggers, you might do better. I'm sorry, I'm being facetious, but I mean, I think all of that stuff can look quite funny from the outside, from a guy of my age who's, I'm out of the market. So I'm just looking in as a researcher. I wasn't brought up with that. I wasn't brought up with that as my reality. I was brought up with a rather old-fashioned reality, from the idea that you could make something of yourself, and if you did, there would be people who found you attractive, and the ones that didn't, that's fine. That's also okay. Then you don't have to be bitter about them. They're just, you just didn't match up for whatever reason. But if you worked on yourself and put yourself out there, you would run into people who find you attractive, and vice versa. That sense seems to have been somewhat lost. And can I digress for like 2 minutes? There's
please.
There's there's a really famous paper by the Whitings. They were a husband and wife team of anthropologists in the 1970s, and they studied a bunch of societies, and they divided them along an axis of aloof to intimate. And intimate societies are ones where the men and women more or less live together, more or less get along as much as men and women ever do. They share childcare, sleep together, live in the same huts. There's always a sexual division of labor, tending towards the men hunting the big game, the women doing the bulk of the calorie stuff, but they more or less get along. And then with the aloof cultures, the men and women live in different parts of the village. Sometimes they live in different villages. Sometimes they have a separate language which the other sex doesn't talk. They'll have separate myth cycles where the men are all represented as these rapacious monsters, and the women are these evil witches who will steal your power. And the elders sort of impose this on the youngsters. And sometimes these are called female gardening ecologies, which is sort of anthropology speak for the women do all the real work, while the men just sort of puff themselves up and make magnificent spears and fly into rages. Now, you can sort of see where I'm going with this, can't you? The mechanisms for aloof societies are there in humans. That is a possible way to live. I think it's not the one I would pick, let's put it that way. I mean, I'm cognizant of my anthropology friends who want to rush in and be relativistic and go, every culture is the same. But I personally would rather not live in an aloof culture, where I'm expected to defend my honor with lethal force, that I regard women as the enemy, and so on and so on. I'd rather live in a rather more wishy-washy kind of liberal kind of where we sort of get along culture. But I can see the seeds of aloof. I'm not suggesting we're going to turn into an aloof culture. That couldn't happen with a complex society like ours. But I do think the seeds for aloof cultures are there in our brains, and you can see them working their ways out in certain online communities, which can become single sex and self-reinforcing of certain kinds of myths. And I think that's roughly what you're getting with some of the incel community. I think you're getting with some of the radical feminist communities as well, incidentally. I mean, I think
in what sense?
For the radical feminist ones. There are female separatist groups who will sort of argue, and you can sort of, I mean, if you look at the male communities, you can sort of see their point. They're going that these men all hate us, and they want to rape us, and their idea of interacting with a woman is absolutely abhorrent. You sort of go, Yeah, I can. Yeah, it is. You can see your point there. And they're sort of arguing for lesbian separatism. Like I said, if I was a woman with exposed to those kinds of things, I might join them. But in the case of the incels, I think you're talking about online communities where the men are encouraging this kind of thing. I think Andrew Tate is just one manifestation of that. He's literally one of these guys who sees women as the enemy, puffs himself up, has a load of sort of easily led male followers who want to see him as some kind of guru figure. And yeah, I mean that would be sort of classic aloof culture behavior. And also, sorry, go on.
No. So what
does that make sense?